Hey guys, Youngblood with you, and today we're doing our 12th episode of the Inbox, where I'm answering any questions that are on your mind. But before we get into those questions, I did want to address a couple things real quick with you. Now, the first of which is regarding the user configuration file. And I've had a lot of people asking what I use because my game ends up looking pretty good in the content that I put out. I'm not using a custom configuration file, so I don't really have a whole lot to share with you guys. And I know you're going to keep asking, and as soon as I have one, I'm absolutely going to share it with you. However, right now, it's just the fact that I'm using a 980 Ti with an overclocked 3570K, and it's done a good job of bringing some great-looking footage out. That being said, I'm considering using one of the ultra.cfg files or the ultra configuration files to see if I can get even better quality, but for right now, it's just everything on very high, and my system's doing a good job with it. But like I said, as soon as I know more about it or have a good one for you, I'll absolutely let you guys know. Now, the other topic is actually surrounding my pirate character that just got released, and that's Blackblood, and some fiction that you're going to be able to end up reading about him if you have interest. One of my patrons, Richard, just made a Star Citizen fan fiction page live at max-strange.com. Now, Max is his primary character that a lot of his stories are going to be about, but he's also going to try and follow some of the exploits of Blackblood and even build some fiction around him to kind of bring that pirate second character even more to life. Overall, the website's really cool, and I think if you're into fan fiction, it's definitely worth checking out, but it's going to be pretty interesting to see how the collaboration between Richard and I works out, because not only is he going to kind of do some writing on his own to bring more depth to the character, but I'm also going to share some of the stuff that I'm doing in-game with him so he can actually kind of build backstories on it, which should make for a pretty cool little environment. So there's going to be a link in the description to that page if you want to check it out. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get to the questions. And the first one's by Bradley Moore, who says, will your personal hangar spawn on a specific planet, or is it random on which one it spawns on? We don't know specifics on how this is all going to work yet, but to my knowledge, what you're going to be able to do is choose which of the hangars you have available and where you want them to go. So, you know, if you're a businessman, you may want to say Ellis is going to be your home system, or maybe Terra is going to be your home system. You're probably going to have a list of different places that you can actually put your hangar, but we need more info on that. There's other things that I want to hear more on too, like am I going to have to chart or pay more per month for a hangar if I'm choosing a Revel in York over a business hangar or the AeroView? Those are going to be interesting things to see. Again, we want confirmation on if that first hangar is going to end up being free or how that's all going to play out. So you're not going to just get stuck in some random location. You're going to get to pick, but how customizable that ends up being, we need to wait and see. John Gallagher says, love the vids and congrats on earning Around the Verse MVP. Thank you. That was a month ago, but so was his question. I'm trying to get caught up with you guys. My question is, what's something not mentioned to be included in Star Citizen that you would like to see implemented? I think for me, some level of detailed crafting system. And I'm not just talking about sitting in an overclocking bench and trying to get better performance out of what's already in game. I'd like to see an ability to actually create a ship from the ground up or create a building from the ground up. Something like that could be really, really cool. Now, I'm not sure if we're ever going to get to that. That's almost like Star Citizen meets Kerbal Space Program, but something in that realm would be really neat, and I personally haven't seen a lot talked about that, so I would like to see if that's something they could maybe work in later. Now, kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum, Lazy Panda says, would you prefer Chris not to promise so many things to be in-game? Too many promises gave them more money, but less ability to deliver what was promised to the backers. You can see how these kind of are on different ends of the spectrum. I'm not super concerned about them being able to deliver. And the reason I say that is because I don't think they're ever saying when they're planning on delivering. So if they come out and say something new is going to be released, they're not saying, hey, we're going to have this in the final release. So something crazy, some new dynamic or some new gameplay mechanic may not necessarily make it in the initial release. That may be something that gets released later on down the line. And I've got faith that based on the money that they've raised and the team that they've got in place and what they've delivered to date, I think there's a lot of things that they're going to be able to put in that maybe may seem like over-promising, but if there's realistic expectations in place, I think they're going to be able to hit it. But I guess on the other end of the spectrum too is I also like that they're over-promising, or not, I shouldn't say that they're over-promising. I like that they're promising a lot of features because at the same time, to me, that also says that they've got the vision. They can see other things that they can put in game. Now, can they figure it all out and get it there? I think they will, but they still have a lot to prove. RMAJ Gaming says, love your videos. Keep up the good work. Thank you. I'll try. So I've got a 350R, and I just wanted to know your thoughts on using it as a high-speed boom and zoom ship. Do you think it would be possible to do that sort of thing, even though that ship isn't really meant for that use? Yeah, I think every ship is going to be capable of things outside of its initial purpose. And the 350R is a really good example of that, because it is built, sold, and distributed as a racer. That being said, when I look at racers, I say could be a decent Inforunner, could be a decent courier, could be a good racer, could be a good scout. There's a lot of things that you can do. 350R is the fastest ship in the game, and if you're talking about an ability to boom and zoom, it can absolutely do the boom or the zoom. But the boom is due to the firepower. And I think when you start talking about that ship, it brings adequate firepower. You know, the Omni-Skies on the side, swap it out for a more hard-hitting nose gun, and I think you've got a really good option for being able to lay down some pain with and being able to get out of trouble. So I think you can absolutely do that. Josh VS Gaming says, when do you think the Reliant's going to be flyable? I believe the Reliant is probably going to be hangar ready in 2.4. It's a possibility it's flight ready then, but I wouldn't say that's following the standard trend. 2.4 sounds like it's going to be a massive release though. So it's possible that we see it flyable, but I wouldn't hold your breath. But I think we get our first look at it in 2.4, and it's probably flyable by 2.5. That's kind of fingers crossed, hoping for the best, but I think that's a pretty good, rough timetable. Thetis, sorry about brutalizing your name there. When do you think we're going to see more on the Reclaimer? And also, I've seen a Reddit post flying around that the Reclaimer will also be able to mine. Is that true as well? As far as when we're going to see it, it's going to be a while, man. It's a low priority ship. It's not going to be in Squadron 42. I think it's really low on the priorities, so I think it's going to be a significant amount of time before we end up seeing anything on the Reclaimer. As far as mining is concerned, I think every ship should have some level of versatility. And if you're going to want to talk about mining, I think you could potentially maybe replace a turret with some mining lasers and then use that arm to reach out and grab, materials, bring it back into your ship, replace some of the scrapyard stuff with some mining. I could absolutely see that being worked into game. Now, is that a promised feature? I can't, no. So I can't say that you're going to be able to mine with the Reclaimer. But I think it's likely a really good possibility that we can see. Now, I don't think you should look at it and say, my Reclaimer is going to compete with my Orion. The Orion is going to be the king of mining. At least that's what it should be. But there should be enough of crossover to where the Reclaimer should be able to do some mining. Duncan Cassie says, I have a question. Does anybody here know if the Reliant and all of its variants will go on sale when the base version is released in a hangar, or will they only release the Reliant Core on sale? They should all probably go on sale once released. Now, we can only really promise the hangar-ready version. So, for example, if the Core A, or Core, however you want to say it, is the only one that's released, we know that one's going to go up for sale. If I had to guess, CIG is probably going to release the whole line because that opens up for them to earn more off of that sale. Because there's probably a lot of people that have the Core A for sale but actually want the Sen. So I would guess that you would see all four of the line actually being released. Strabless says, how soon are we going to see a working economy? I think we're closer than you think because persistence is close. Now, this is one of those areas where Chris does a lot of talking and you can almost feel the developers being like, oh, Chris, hold on a little second. We're not quite sure we're there yet. But Chris seemed to hint that there's going to be some level of persistence really taking place in 2.4. I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of the economy taking place until we start seeing things like rec being implemented and we start seeing things like, cargo being implemented. I think if 2.4 is next, I would say 2.5, 2.6 is when we really start getting our first looks at some form of an economy. But ultimately, until cargo and buying and selling of goods is in place, we're probably waiting for that to happen. So that might be 3.0. An economy is a huge thing to implement into the game. So 3.0 might be when we actually get our first real economy, though we might get some teasers kind of leading up to that. It's going to be a little while before you see something really robust, though. Mike MF Panic says, with the Herald being practically on the lowest tier of priority, it gives us more opportunity to theory craft. That's true about its Inforunner role. Have you crafted any theories on info running? And yeah. So basically, what would you do as an info runner? I think that info running does have viability, and I think it's something that's going to make sense. I think if you're talking about being able to steal info from other players, so take an explorer. An explorer just comes back from a long jaunt, and they've gathered all this data, and they've found like a derelict bangle, and they've found a really good mining field, and they found a new system that they want to name for themselves. That's info you could potentially steal. And if you want to talk about a profit, being able to sell the location of a bangle, you're going to make a crap load of money, especially from other players. So that sort of thing is going to have a profitability. Now the question is, how is that implemented into the game? Does the system actually retain that? And if so, how? Is that some label in the ship system called bangle location coordinates equal this? Well, that might be easy to steal, but how do you actually steal it? There's a lot about info running we don't know, but it's definitely got the possibility to be an extremely lucrative and fun career. I think the other thing to consider, and I think this is the safest bet on how communication is going to work in an info runner role, is we don't think there's going to be inter-system faster than light communication. So if you want to talk about like getting communication from Terra all the way over to Castra or something like that, that's probably 5 or 6 jumps away. Well, you're not going to be able to just call up somebody from Terra and get a hold of them immediately a couple systems over. Now, there's going to be some communication. They have to find out the right balance of gameplay and realism. But as far as actually transmitting large amounts of data, having something like a Herald to take information a long range, almost like the Pony Express, makes sense. And I think that's where you're going to see the most value to the ship, at least on a ongoing, ongoing basis. And the last question for this video, and we'll do another one soon, Doug Brady says, I'd like to purchase an industrial ship. I'd like to purchase one that I could still use with NPCs when my friends are away. So between Starfarer, Orion, Reclaimer, is there any that you believe would be easier to operate with NPCs? The one that stands out to me there is the Starfarer. And it's because we know that it can be operated with 2, and that includes NPCs. And if you're talking about just getting value out of it, being able to just fly the ship around and collect fuel could be a solo operation. Now, if you're talking about being really proficient, flying around while you're refining, while you've got somebody on your turret, while you've got somebody managing your shield, while you've got somebody managing your sensors, there's a lot more to it that makes the ship more proficient. But can you actually be capable of using a Starfarer with 1 or 2 people? Yes. Things like an Orion, it kind of falls into the same category, but I think there's more things that happened or have to happen on a simultaneous basis. You're slicing stuff with a laser while you're bringing stuff into your ship, and then you actually have to play the mini game to get the actual breakdown of materials, and then you have to sort it. There's a lot more that I get the impression that's going on the Orion than the Starfarer, even though I think they're going to have similar paths. So could you do it in Orion? Yeah, you could probably run from station to station, but I think it would take you forever. Reclaimer's the ship that I just don't know enough about to say yes or no. We've gotten information to a certain extent about fuel. We've got a lot of information considering what's released in game on mining. We don't really know crap about salvage at this point. So I would look at it and say, yeah, I mean, you could probably park your ship stationary, operate the arm while one other dude is in the back trying to break stuff down. But we just don't know. So to be safe, I think the Starfarer is the most capable out of those, but I don't really know that with 100% certainty. So that's going to be it for this video. I'm trying to keep them relatively shorter, under 15 minutes. As always, if you've got questions, get them in. Otherwise, I'll have another one of these out soon. Have yourselves a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Take care.